Hello, everyone. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. This week, we'll be looking at cultural perspectives on managing in the multinational corporation, paying a particular attention to etic approaches. Just as an overview, we'll be looking at cultural perspectives and how these impact on managing in multinational corporations. We'll be looking at etic approaches, so we'll start by defining and describing etic approaches, and also looking at some Etic approach definitions. Then we'll look at how cultural influences affect multinationals, and we'll look at Hofstede and Trumpeter's cultural dimensions. So, if we look at historical approaches to international management, we can start with universalistic theories. So these theories have radical convergence around globalization. They pretend that management and organizations are subject to the same universal laws everywhere in the world. And we'll see that in our core text for this week. Basically, what these theories try to say is that they predict that cultural differences will disappear with globalization. So as globalization continues, cultural differences should disappear and the world should have one homogeneous culture. The other flip side of this are particularistic theories, and these leave room for difference to an extent only, in the fact that these theories say that organizations and management in different countries differ fundamentally and that different explanations are necessary because of these fundamental differences. So they insist that cultural differences will persist with globalization. Okay, so here we have two theories: universalistic theories saying that cultural differences will leave because of globalization, and particularistic theories saying that cultural differences will persist with globalization. And this brings us nicely to the different approaches to studying national culture, whether they persist or they leave. Okay, so the first approach to studying national cultural diversity are etic approaches, okay? So etic approaches relate to or involve the analysis of cultural phenomena from the perspective of one who does not participate in the culture being studied. So sort of like an outsider approach, okay? So analyzing cultural phenomena from the perspective of one who does not participate in the culture being studied. And the flip side of this, we have Etic approaches. And this relate to or involve the analysis of cultural phenomena from the perspective of one who participates in the culture being studied. So one who actually does participate in the culture being studied. So we have these different approaches to national cultural diversity. So we have the etic approach, which is the outsider approach, one who does not participate. And we have the emic approach, the insider perspective, one who participates. Now, you might ask yourself, where does reality lie? And it could be that reality is somewhere in the middle, okay? One who is a bit outside, so you can look at the big picture, but one who also participates, so you can understand the nuances. And this week, we'll be looking at etic approaches, which relate to or involve the analysis of cultural phenomena from the perspective of one who does not participate in the culture being studied. So one who does not participate in the culture being studied. Okay, so I'll put the case study online. You'll see it in the KLE folder. And it is a cross-cultural negotiation process between a firm in America, the US of A, and a firm in China, okay, the People's Republic of China, right? And when you read the case study, I want you to ask yourself certain questions. What are the different approaches both parties take to business negotiations, okay? So how do different parties, different cultures negotiate? The second question is, what are the mistakes both parties have committed in the cross-cultural negotiation process, and what could they have done better? So as you read the case study, okay, what mistakes did they make and what could they have done better? And then finally, the third question is, can you explain the different approaches and mistakes on the basis of etic and emic research into the American and Chinese national cultures? So from the perspective of one who does not participate and from the perspective of one who participates in both cultures, okay? So those are the three questions to answer as you read the case study. If you want to do some further reading before you come to class this week, you can ask yourself certain questions. What is culture? What exactly is culture? What influences culture? How does culture affect multinational corporations? Or how are multinational corporations affected by culture? And should multinational corporations consider culture when devising strategy? Okay. Finally, we should ask ourselves, what is the role of cultural diversity in international business? So ask yourself these questions as you come to class, okay? But once again, just to be clear, when you read the case study, these are the questions you have to answer. You can type it out on your computer or you can write it on a piece of paper or in your books. The questions you have to answer that we'll discuss in the tutorials this week are: what are the different approaches both parties take to business negotiations? What are the mistakes both parties have committed in the cross-cultural negotiation process, and what could they have done better? And finally, can you explain the different approaches and mistakes on the basis of etic and emic research into the American and Chinese national cultures?